So 16 years ago, my life changed in quite a major way, a bit like a train on a track when it sort of jolts onto a new track, and it was a jolt. My son was born 16 years ago, and he'd been much awaited. We'd been trying to get pregnant for quite a while, and for the first few months of his life, he just cried, and he really did cry. And I know babies cry, but this was really crying. So it became apparent that Ethan was quite different to other children, and eventually we got a diagnosis, and he has got severe epilepsy and a syndrome called West syndrome, which meant that he's got arrested development. So he's 16 now, and he can laugh and cry, and that's about it. But Ethan just is. He just is. And over the years, it's obviously been a long journey, but we've come to accept and maybe not every day, but even celebrate his disability. Sometimes my husband jokes about him, that he'll get him a t-shirt that says, "I will never work, I will cost the state millions of pounds, but I will always be loved." And I think for me, it's become a huge part of my faith journey that Ethan is a real catalyst for love, and wherever he is, people around him love him, and he really brings out love in people. So when you have a disabled child, often people say to you, it's a bit like going on a journey, going on a plane and arriving in a country that you didn't expect. And that's certainly true. But we've found this country mostly, there's been difficult times obviously, especially with fighting for respite and care for Ethan and services, but mostly this country has been full of other families with disabled kids and carers and people who are just full of love and kindness. One particular day, I remember when Ethan was about 4, the agency that we used for some carers for him sent a carer, and I remember my husband and I looked at each other and sort of sighed with a bit of despair, thinking, why have they sent this person? She seemed so quiet and passive, and we just thought, oh, she'll never be able to look after Ethan. In fact, this person, Vivian, turned out to be an angel in disguise, really, and she became part of our life for about 10 years looking after Ethan. And was amazing, and really taught me that often we can experience God and love in places and people that we don't expect. And I suppose for me it's been in some ways quite a humbling journey. So being honest, before I had Ethan, I think disability made me quite uncomfortable, and I would maybe even avoid it. And so obviously it's been quite a journey for me, so perhaps God's got a sense of humour. I don't see God as a kind of puppet master who, sends things to try us, but certainly this has been a huge part of my journey and my vocation as well. So I'd always had a sense of vocation, and in my 20s I'd explored that a little bit and decided to express it through teaching, but it's always kind of been there, slightly haunting me. And through the experience of Ethan, I guess it's made me more compassionate and more open to people, and made me more down to earth. And I think the experience of Ethan in his total vulnerability has made me learn about a different idea of God. There's a famous book about disability and theology by Nancy Iceland called The Disabled God, and she points out that for a lot of people with disabilities, images of God are quite difficult, particularly where they're very sort of triumphalist. And she reminds us that Jesus, when he came back from the dead, was wounded, and I think this sense of vulnerability is something that Ethan's brought home to me. And sometimes when I see him, it really makes me think of the face of God. I mean, not every day, we've got to be honest, having a disabled child is very challenging, but that sense of God's vulnerability and love has definitely propelled me forward in vocation, and now I'm training. And I think one of the things that it's brought home to me about disability and special needs is a kind of zooming out, that's seeing that humanity is a huge range and spectrum of different people and different abilities, and this is all part of God's wonderful creation and wonderful tapestry, and as the church and as Christians we should really learn to celebrate that, and that's something that is part of my vocation as well.